Hello everyone. This is something you've never seen before on the Scrimba live stream, I think, and that is 4 people. Yes, because today I'm honoured to be joined by no fewer than 3 successful Scrimba students. Yeah, amazing stuff. It's a very special live stream for you all because we're going to be hearing these student success stories. And we have here Silvia, who's a front-end engineer at a company called OMP. And Silvia is going to share how she learned React and managed a career change after several years in another industry. Now, I know that a lot of people studying with Scrimba currently work or have worked in another industry, so it should be very helpful to hear from Silvia. And then there's Ineza, a full-stack engineer at Relevant Bits. Hello. Ineza will tell us about his unusual but very effective job search approach, which you might not have thought of doing. So stay tuned for that. And also about some struggles that he overcame when learning to code. We all struggle when learning to code, so stick around and you'll get some top tips about how to overcome them. And we have James, a front-end developer at Ducky.eco. And James is going to talk about how he built an original and fun set of projects that show off on his portfolio. So stay tuned for that. But first, a very warm welcome to all of you. Brilliant that you're all here. So we do these sessions live. Feel free to ask any questions which come to your mind in the chat. Do my best to ask as many as possible. But let's start off with one that I had planned, which is about learning to code without a school or a boot camp. How did you do it? And let's start this one with Ineza, if we can.
Awesome. Yeah, so for me, learning to code without a school or a boot camp, I think one of the best resources that I found was probably YouTube. When I started earlier, because there's a ton of resources on YouTube and a ton of YouTube developers posting content. And I know that Free Code Camp is one of them. They post regular tutorials on various coding languages, and I saw that as a great resource when I was starting out in coding. And also, the Free Code Camp website, which is also another amazing tool, is something else that I used to learn coding, because I guess in my younger years, I guess I didn't have the opportunity to be enrolled in a school or pay a ton of money for a boot camp. But yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. You might not want to spend a load of money on a boot camp or a school, as you mentioned. Well, thank you for that. What about you, Silvia? How did you come to the place of learning to code on your own?
Well, I actually did the bootcamp because first thing was for me to do a bootcamp here in Barcelona. It was a virtual one because it was just after the pandemic, and actually a free one because it's publicly organized. And it was mentored more than with a lot of classes every day. But after that boot camp, I didn't feel ready for applying for a job. So I said, okay, now I have the basics and let's go for studying on my own. And that's when I found Scrimba and also Free Code Camp, as Ineza mentioned. So very valid resources. For me, it works better when there is interactivity. So I'm very disciplined, but if it's just one person talking by themselves, like you see on YouTube many times, it doesn't work. So that's why I went for those resources. And yeah, I think I studied on my own, like for sure 8 months. and afterwards I felt ready for applying, and I went for that.
Perfect. I absolutely know what you mean about interactivity, because for me, when I'm learning something, you can talk to me about it as much as you like. It's just going to go over my head until I actually start doing it myself. That can be driving, cooking, coding, absolutely anything, which is why we are big on interactivity in Scrimba. This is Scrimba, and we have our career path program, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I think all of you have studied at least part of it. And then you can find a lot of interactive coding challenges, so you'll have your hands on the keyboard as much as possible. There is a question here from Darius, which I'll direct to you, James, because we haven't heard from you just yet. And that is, how did you get over the JavaScript hump? Now, this is something I'm sure many people are familiar with. You do HTML, great, all going rosy. You do CSS, it seems easy. It's actually not, but you might not know that until later. And then JavaScript suddenly comes along and smashes you in the face. Did this happen to you? And if so, how did you get over it?
Yeah, so thanks, Leanne. The complexity of JavaScript hit me the minute I started trying to do things. And I think for me, the most important thing was understanding the fundamentals of data types and loops and functions, and realizing that these are actually concepts that are cross-language. They don't just apply to JavaScript, they apply to all languages. And once you begin to understand data structures, once you get that an object is this, but this is what it means in terms of its representation within specific languages changes, then I began to sort of understand what was going on. Particularly when you start looking at DOM events and you start looking at the complexity of actually what's going on and life cycles, everything comes back to, oh, it's an object, it's an object, it's an object. And once I just took the time and literally bought the book on the O'Reilly book of, I can't remember what it's called, like the bumper book of JavaScript or something, was and actually spent the time to read and understand the difference between these primitive data types and more complicated data types. That's when it unlocked itself for me in my mind. So yeah, I think the key was understanding. You can copy someone, but when you actually begin to understand something is when you can explain it to someone else. And when you can explain what's going on under the hood, not just, okay, I can use this method and do this stuff, but actually I know why this callback function does this, and I know what's being returned here, and I can tell you. Then it began to flow. And up until that point, I felt overwhelmed. So break it down, small chunks, understand a little bit really well, and then put it together.
I think that's an excellent point there about understanding the fundamentals. I think that applies as well, not just for JavaScript, but also CSS and pretty much anything. If you don't fully understand the fundamentals, you might get stuff working, but you'll never fully understand why. As you said, on Twitter earlier, there was this meme about when your code works, but you don't know why. And it was a helicopter in the sky, but the rotary blades weren't moving. I think we've all been there, where you get something working and you're like, not sure whether to be happy or slightly concerned. So yes, excellent point there. Come to another question from Sean, which is, how much knowledge do you feel like you needed in order to land a job? Now, Silvia, you mentioned after the bootcamp you didn't feel ready. So then you started on your own. How did you realize that you'd come to the point where you are ready to start applying now?
Well, I think for most people that point will never come, like being fully ready for applying, because you read the job descriptions and it's like, yeah, okay, I need to be able to do everything from backend to DevOps. So for me, it was a combination of what James mentioned, so that click on JavaScript mixed with sort of the same click for React. So going back to the basics of JavaScript, understanding data structures, how a function works. So what do I need to give it as argument? And what do I need to return as a result? And then applying this to React and understanding how it works behind the scenes. Because after the bootcamp, I could build things with React, of course, but I didn't really understand what was going on because my JavaScript knowledge wasn't that strong. So after some months of studying deep JavaScript and React, I felt I understood things better and I would be able to explain how I thought things worked in an interview, so to another person. In this sense, also helping other developers helped me in turn. Like in the Scrimba community, I've always enjoyed helping other people with coding questions, and that helped me a lot because when you help others, you also reframe your thoughts and rethink about the things that you're going to explain, so you realize maybe you're missing some piece about the event loop, for instance. Maybe you understand more or less how a promise works, but really you don't know what's happening to a promise when you launch it. So yeah, it can be very subjective, the answer, but for me it was that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, when you try to explain something to someone else, you might realize, oh, I actually don't get this as well as I thought I did, which can be humbling, but also very useful. Some people are asking in the chat, what was the name of that book? Wesley would like to know. I found this one. I'm not sure if it is this.
Yep, that'll be it.
JavaScript, the definitive guide,
I think
with a rhino
edition, but yeah, it was one of those books.
Yeah.
I think any comprehensive guide to JavaScript we find. I don't think it needs to be a specific book.
Yeah.
It's just, something that you pick up. I mean, I still pick it up on a daily basis when I want to know something. What are the parameters array from? Okay. I like yes, I can look it up on NDM, but it's nice to have a physical book when someone's actually giving you examples, and you go, oh, okay, right, this takes a callback function that returns blah blah blah. Okay, great, this is useful. So yeah, it works for me. I recommend it.
Great tip, thank you. Ineza, there's a question here from Elise, which says, how to overcome the lack of computer science degree. What was your approach with this?
Yeah, so I guess one thing, that I saw that there's still some job descriptions out there or companies that will still require you to have a computer science degree. Though some of them are becoming more lenient and would also add on that you, even though you may not have a computer science degree, you at least have some sort of experience in the field. So when I saw that, I would apply anyway, because I don't think, I guess nowadays with how things are going in software development, a computer science degree may not be as as important as it used to be. I guess in the past, people, myself, I was able to land a job without a computer science degree. So I'd say, whenever you come across, such job descriptions, I'd advise you to apply anyway, because it is through the interviews that your employer will be able to get to know you as a person and know of your skills, and they may be able to decide otherwise and be like, hey, this person, they don't have a computer science degree, but they are well skilled and they have everything that we need for them to execute this job. So yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, good point. We always say on Scrimba, when people ask us, do I really need to know all of this stuff like CSS, DevOps, front-end, back-end that's listed in the job description? We always say, no, that's a wish list, basically. And I think it's the same for a computer science degree. I'm sure there are companies that absolutely want you to have one, but maybe others are more lenient, and even if they put it in required, it's actually more like a nice to have. So what are you going to lose from giving it a try? Perfect. And there is a question from Demo Dev, wanting to know about your interview experiences, like coding rounds, MCQ tests. I'm not actually sure what those are, but yeah, what was your interview experience like? And Silvia, would you like to start by telling us what yours was like?
Yeah, so I had different experiences. I think mainly it depends on the company. So for one company I interviewed, there was a first interview with the technical team, and then they sent like a problem set, a real problem, like based on the job you were supposed to do afterwards. And they said, you have as much time as you need to complete this. It was so make a new feature, solve a bug, and comment a pull request. And for me, I had never commented a pull request before, so it was also nice for giving it a try. And my current company had different rounds of interviews with HR, and then a technical interview where they asked a lot of coding questions. And also we did together some live coding. And then another company I interviewed for, it was just mainly calls, first with HR and then with a technical person. So it varies widely, depends. Also, I know that some companies are sending lead code tests or similar things. I think that's just the barrier to first enter and pass to the technical interview. It's just a way for them to do a first filter, to apply a first filter on the applicants. So yeah, for me it wasn't too bad. All in all, I think it was okay, even if I had never done technical interviews before. So that part was very new for me. Also, if I may add one last thing, this time interviewing, as compared to my previous experience in different jobs, I was taking the interview more like a dialogue. And I think that helped me a lot because I got to ask any kind of questions that I'd like to ask, like what's the coding stack, until are you happy at this company? So it was really a good experience for me, and I think also a more enjoyable experience for the interviewers, because it was not like a university exam, but more like a chat. So I was happy about that.
Brilliant. The important thing to remember as well is it's not just them deciding whether or not to hire you. It's you deciding if it's a place you really want to work at. So I think approaching it as a chat is an excellent thing to do. Going back briefly to the book recommendation, James has helpfully shared in the chat here. It looks very similar, but it is different. No, it's that one. I think this is the one.
Edition of the same book. It's been going on.
Yes. So look out for JS guide with a rhino on it, and that's the one for you. James, would you like to tell us about your interview experience, specifically for the job that you ended up taking with Ducky.eco, as much as you're allowed to share, of course?
Sure. Yeah, so I think my initial interview, well, I didn't have an initial interview. In fact, I just got a standard email saying, thank you for your blah, blah, blah. We'd like to invite you to do a coding test. Here is some parameters. We want you to implement this little component using, whatever you like. And so that was quite fun for me because it was a component using D3, which, I decided to implement it using D3. It was like a pie chart. And it just turned out that they were using D3 already on some of their mapping stuff with some of their visualizations of some bar charts and some pie charts and stuff. So the fact that I did that sort of impressed them, I think. I just got lucky, let's be honest. But to me, it seemed like a good technology to use for that use case. And then they did a actual face-to-face interview. Well, it was done over Google Meet, but we did a face-to-face, and then I did another one, and then another one, and there were technical questions during that interview, but actually the most time was spent on I think once they satisfied themselves that he was able to do it, or at least we could shape him into being able to do it, then it was more about fit, and that was a lot of time, because the company I work with is quite specific on their kind of mission in sort of promoting sustainable, environmentally friendly sort of products, and we are whole 100% focused on those kinds of innovations. So then it was all about sort of culture and getting to know some of the other developers and having conversations in a sort of more free-form way. So, and I found it a little bit strange. I thought, it's just a job, I'm not getting married here. But it was, once I got the offer and was brought in, it was clear that I wasn't the most experienced candidate, or wasn't like the one with all the impressive credentials, but they felt that I was a good fit for the company, and I think that's what made the difference.
Good stuff. Excellent story. I'd like to pause our interview briefly to congratulate Marcel, because Marcel has been on, watched the Scrimba live stream before, I believe. Last month passed a 3-month trial period like Frontend Developer. And 90% of experiences before I applied on the first job came from Scrimba. So Marcel has transitioned from mechanical engineering to being a front-end developer, just like our Friday coding host, Michael. So excellent to hear. Another one in the team there. Congratulations to you. Ineza, question for you from Design is Life, which is, how should a junior dev, or someone who wants to be a junior dev, go about job hunting? Now, I'm asking you because I understand you had a bit of a unique approach to job hunting. Could you tell us about that, please?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the best way to apply to do job hunting, I guess, first is starting with those around you, those your friends. Let them know that you're looking for a job. And if anyone has any recommendations, they could, share to you, or if they know that their company is hiring, they could, also, give you a recommendation. And then I guess the other way also is to also create profiles on LinkedIn or Indeed. And I think LinkedIn is one which is most popular and used by a lot of recruiters to search for developers. so creating a LinkedIn profile and making sure that it is updated with with all your details, and then also setting your parameters right, I guess, on LinkedIn, because you're able to set your location and then it will recommend to you jobs that have been posted around where you live or in locations that you're interested in. And then also having an up to date resume could help as well. I guess for me, what sort of helped me in job hunting was having a portfolio that I updated with articles. Though I've sort of been slacking on it for a while, but I had a portfolio website where I'd write blog articles about things that I've learned, and that is in coding. So basically, any sort of concept that I've learned, whether it's a fun small app that I made in Gatsby, I would sort of document it and post it on my blog. And then also I started this thing a while back called gardening, creating a digital garden, whereby I post. So the digital garden is more about posting the small things that I've learned on a certain day. Like, for example, whenever you're coding and then you discover, oh, this is something that I didn't know. You can write like a small note and then post it on your garden. So it would be like your digital journal or something that someone could come back and can come across and be like, oh, I didn't know this. So having that, I guess, sort of, and then adding those links as well to my CV, I guess, sort of helped, to show I guess, whoever is would be hiring me to to show that I'm trying to learn in public. I may not be the best out there, but I am making progress towards learning and growing my skills. Yeah, I think those are some of the things that probably helped me. Yeah.
Excellent advice there with LinkedIn, especially. It's so popular for getting developer jobs. And one tip I picked up a couple of weeks ago on a live stream with a LinkedIn professional was when you set the location underneath your profile, set it to the greater metropolitan area. So, for example, if you live in London, instead of putting London, put London metropolitan area, which probably no one actually calls it. But what that does is it shows you London jobs in the centre of London, but also those which are reasonably commutable from London. So widens your search field a bit. Hot tip, which I thought would fit in with what you just said. So thank you, Ineza. I did have a question here, which was from Amos. And that is, can junior developers do a remote job? So this got me wondering whether your first tech jobs were indeed remote or were they in person? And if you had an opinion about whether it's best to be remote or in person, or it doesn't actually matter. Silvia, let's start with you.
That's a good question, because I was asking myself the same thing before starting to apply. So for myself, I preferred a not fully remote job. So this is my first job, and I'm going average 2 times a week at the office in person. For the rest, we work remote, and also my project is mostly remote. But for me, it helped a lot because I actually know the people to whom I'm asking to help me constantly. So I think it's perfectly possible to do a remote job, but ultimately depends on the person and how you create relationships. Like for me, it's very, very easy to create relationships with colleagues if I know them in person. So maybe sharing a coffee or just chit-chatting, sitting close to them. And then I have absolutely no problems in collaborating remotely. But I wanted to have that possibility to go in person, at least for the first job. Also, but this is personal, I had stayed home with my baby quite a lot of time before going back to the workforce, so that was also a factor for me.
Yes, thank you. Glad to hear about your experience there. What was it like for you, James? Were you remote or, well, you mentioned you're in the office at the moment, so yeah.
Yeah, and I don't live very near the office. It's like a train journey for me, so it's a bit of a slog in, and it's quite time consuming. But I always value it when I do come in, because the experiences I have are very hard to replicate, even with all the best technology. Today I was sitting with one of the designers talking about something I'm implementing, which is like a nav component with an avatar and stuff. And, I just wanted to ask little questions about what should happen at specific things, and it's much easier to do that when someone's sitting over there and you say, can you come look at my screen and just tell me, is that like 1 pixel up or down, or what, whatever it is. It's easy to have those conversations. It's kind of harder to do that. Like, oh, can we have a conversation about this pixel? Type thing. So yes, it is doable, but at the same time, I would say that the benefit of technology is that if you're structured about it, and we are, for example, the most experienced people are also very open in my team for doing pair programming sessions, and those have been the most valuable things that I've done actually during my time in this company, when I've been able to spend time directly with people. And that has been in person, and it's also been online, and frankly, very little difference with all the tools that are available. So once you're into it, you're into it. So yeah, I'd say not a problem, as long as you are structured and you are prepared to ask for help. And you've got to be prepared to ask for help, and not sort of go, oh, I'm going to spend hours trying to figure this thing out by myself, which someone could probably help me within 10 minutes and just give me the answer. So, and that's easier to do when you're in an office environment than if you're remote working.
Yeah, I think you make a great point there about you have to have the right infrastructure in place as well, because if you're using some awful video calling program from 15 years ago, not to name any names, we all know what I'm talking about, and it's just painful every single time you have a call, then obviously your work life is going to be absolute hell. So maybe that's a question you could ask in the interview if it is a remote job. What software do you use to work remotely? And then if they say one which you don't like, you can say, oh, no, thank you. Brilliant. Thank you for that. Let's have a question for Ineza now. That is, well, there's so many questions coming in. Keep them coming as well. Oh, this is an interesting one. Do the more senior devs at your jobs get annoyed at having to help juniors all the time? So James, you just mentioned about asking people for help. Inez, I haven't heard from you in a while. So can you tell us what your experience has been like asking people for help in the workplace?
Yeah, and I think, I guess as a newbie at a company, you would think that that I'm bugging this person a lot with so many questions. Maybe I should just try to figure this out on my own. But it's actually quite the opposite. They are at my company, at least, they are very welcoming to questions, because it shows that you're trying to learn and you're curious. So yeah, it's, and they always encourage us to bug them with questions. So no, they do not get annoyed at all, and they're always happy to help, or or jump on a Zoom call if needed. So yeah, you should always, I guess, not feel afraid to ask questions, but it's encouraged to ask questions, because the more you keep your questions, you'll be seated there, as James said, and procrastinate all day long, wondering why this is not working. So it's always good to reach out for help as soon as you can figure out. And one of the ways that they suggest is, give yourself a certain time limit. Like, for example, I'm giving myself 30 minutes to figure out this issue. If it's not solved by then, or I've not come across anything, I'm going to reach out to my manager for help. And that will help you save time and get your work done more efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely will. And two things, as well as just getting the help by asking someone, that can happen when you do that, are when you're typing out the question, you might figure out the answer. I've done that a few times. As soon as I start writing it, something clicks, and then it's sorted. And the other thing that can happen is it might turn out that the problem is not your lack of knowledge or inability to figure out a problem. It's just some quirk in the system that's specific to your company or that code base that no one's mentioned to you yet. And as soon as you mention it, they'll be like, oh yeah, I should have told you about that. It's this. And you'll be like, I've wasted 3 days on this. Yeah, I think the time limit there, absolutely brilliant advice. Question here from Mohammed. I took a course on JS and I'm very confident with that. But after learning React, I'm not getting that much confidence. Any advice? I'll direct this to you, Silvia, because you've mentioned your experience about learning React elsewhere in the Scrimba community. Have you got any tips for Mohammed here?
Okay, so I don't know, because I think two things might be happening. Or maybe you're not as strong in JavaScript as you think you are. None of us is, because JavaScript is really broad, and to know JavaScript in that, I think it's years and years and years. And that might be React is in the end just a library. So it's based on JavaScript, and you are supposed to know JavaScript very well. At least this was my case, to understand React better. Not everything, but better. And then the second thing, maybe you have not built enough yet in React. Like now that I'm working 8 hours a day with React, I understand a bit more, but still I don't understand everything about React. So I think knowledge and technical skills build up very quickly when you start to do things, to try and experiment and see, will this work? Oh no, this is giving an error. This is rendering 10 times more. And yes, there is a lot of little complicated things that you will know, but when time is mature for that, so you cannot expect to understand 100% of it, but at least the basics, and then build on that. For me, it was the practice. Now it's still the practice. Still, I feel like I don't know much, but I'm building on that. So yeah, time.
Lovely, yeah. I have a question here from CEW 3373. Well, maybe the kids will know what that name means, but yes. Anyway, advice is, what advice would you have for an older person, brackets pushing 50, trying to land an entry-level or junior development job? I would like to expand this question a bit to ask whether anyone has any tips about transitioning from a different career into tech, as I know at least some, maybe all of you, are in that boat. Yes. Silvia, let's start with you and then see what the others have to say afterwards.
Okay, so for me, the key point was leveraging what I already did, my experience and the strong points that I had in different jobs and different industry. At the beginning, I thought, okay, maybe this is not relevant because it was not in IT. I was also wondering if removing past experience from my CV, but that would have been a big mistake because with all the companies I interviewed, my previous experience was seen as an added value to my application. So for me, it would be leverage the network you may already have, like in LinkedIn or past colleagues, past coworkers, past managers. Maybe just asking them feedback. What am I good at? What are my strong points? Why did you like working with me? Because that might also help in building up your presentation and your starting point in the interview. You know, for me, it was this for sure.
Brilliant advice there. Thank you for that. James, would you like to add anything to that? I'm asking because I know you did a career that was different to tech before transitioning in. So how was that for you?
Absolutely. I mean, I was a project manager for many years, not in tech, so it wasn't particularly relevant, my experience to tech. And it really was a dramatic shift for me. And I'm 44. I know I may not look it, but it certainly is, I think, more difficult to get a look in when you're older. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, frankly. I think to do with not necessarily about you, but more to do with concerns that if we hire someone who's more experienced, or they come in with set ideas, or like if we take a 21-year-old with a CS degree, we can just mold them and make them our own. But there are many aspects in my day-to-day work, when we're talking about whatever we're doing, some kind of review process that project management experience has been extremely useful, which I didn't expect. It just turns out to be quite helpful. But I think in order to overcome that barrier, and I do think it's a barrier, and I think we should be honest about it, that it is more difficult the older you get. And I think you need to tell a good story about where you are, where you've come from, what you've been doing, and where you're going. Why are you making this transition? What has been, and for me, the story was, okay, I loved doing coding as a child. I did it at school. I went into a different career, and during the pandemic, I rediscovered my love for coding and decided that I wanted to make a career of it. And then I started doing, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then I could paint the picture to people where I've been going. So I think, you can't hide things from people. Your career is what it is, your experience is what it is. You should be honest about it, but you can certainly emphasize what is you're working on. And I think what I do think is very difficult is when you see confused messages from people like, I want to do this and this and this. Well, really, do you actually want to be a front-end developer? Because apparently you also want to be this as well. So what is it? If you say, I want this is where I'm going, then people will be very open, I think, to what you're saying is, because you've got a limited time to impress yourself upon them. And if you're telling a clear, simple story, you're going to get past the first hurdle.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Segueing slightly into a question from Seared Toast. Good username. Sounds like a band. Do you suggest another alternative to LinkedIn? I don't necessarily want my current employer to know I'm seeking a career change. Completely understandable there. I do know you can make yourself open to recruiters without your employer knowing. Just be careful with that though, because if your employer happens to be seeking employees, I think they might find you somehow. So just take that with a pinch of salt. Also, little suggestion here, work on your online visibility. Very important. And work on your portfolio. And after that, you can work on your LinkedIn profile and apply. That is an excellent point, because if you get the other things like your online visibility and your portfolio up to scratch, then you're going to have a much better chance of succeeding when you do press the big red LinkedIn I'm looking for a job button. So thank you for that wonderful tip there. Bob Zirell's in the chat. Hello, everyone. Speaking of React just now, I love hearing success stories and advice from Scrimba students. So congrats to these three for joining the live stream today. Absolutely. Thank you, Bob, for dropping on by. Great to hear from you. This is an interesting question from Odogwu1. What kind of questions should a junior developer be expecting in an interview? I guess this might not necessarily be technical questions, could be questions in general. But let's hear from Ineza. What are the most memorable questions you had in your interviewing process?
Yeah. So I guess there were, the ones that are most common. Like, for example, you'd be asked, tell us a bit about yourself, like your background. And then, with that question, you're basically, telling them how your coding journey has been, or your past working experiences in that line of field. And then what kind of and then you also, in my interview case, I remember that we also got into some to the coding questions, where I was being asked questions regarding the certain frameworks that I use, are, for example, what my thought process is behind, when I'm starting a new project, and then what, how do I test my applications? Such questions are what I can remember from my interview. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. What about you, Silvia?
I think what Ineza mentioned about the thought process is what really impacted me, because I thought it was important to know everything they asked, but in fact, it's not the most important thing. I believe the most important thing is showing them how you reason and how you are getting to a solution or trying to get to a solution. And if you don't really know, just say, I don't know, maybe you can give me a hint. And they will point you in the right direction if they are good. If not, okay, next question. But for me, after the technical interviews, I was like, okay, I bombed this, because this I didn't know, this I didn't know, this I didn't know. But no, actually, they went all well, because I don't know, I like to talk, and I like also to think out loud. So when I'm thinking, I also talk and say, maybe this should be of this type, or so. That's what impacted me the most. And then another funny question, not a question, but a comment that I got was at the end of 1.5 hours of technical interview, where my portfolio was never mentioned. One of the interviewers asked, but why you started coding after so much time, since your husband has been coding forever. And that was an information they could only read in my portfolio. Like I put some funny notes at the end of the page. So I thought, you went through my portfolio after all. You read all of it.
Interesting. Yeah. Very good. Question here from Prince Ganaku, which is, I'm really struggling to get an interview. Any advice about CV and cover letter to help me get over that? Interesting point here, because we often talk about I haven't been able to get a job. Our advice at Scrimba is try to identify at what point in the job hunt process you're falling out. So if you have an interview, you're not getting the job, perhaps it's your interview skills you should improve. If you're sending in CVs, not getting interviews, perhaps you need to take another look at your CV, which is something Prince here has identified. And let's hear from you, James. Any tips about CV and cover letters to help Prince?
I found the same experience. I sent out an awful lot of CVs and cover letters, and it was almost always automated rejection. So much that I started setting up a filter, like if this word's unfortunately is included, just put it into the bin because I'm not interested in reading it. And it is tiresome. It gets you down. I think you have to, keep spirits up and not get sidetracked. Focus on your core mission there. I think less is more. I think with the ones that I mean, in the end, I only had 3 interviews actually, and I got the 3rd job that I even got through like the initial round. So once the door was open, I was able to get in. Just getting the door open was difficult. So I think the most important takeaway from that is targeting, rather than the shot, splatter gun approach. Focus on your, be more sniper focused. And I think I did that with the company I got. I was very specific. I did my research. I looked at them. I looked at what they were doing. I looked at their tech offering. And I was, I'm not going to say that works. Like if I spend all this time on this one company, no, don't spend like 4 hours, but be much more targeted in your approach. And I think that, in my experience, will yield benefits.
Thank you for that. Let's speed through some more questions because there's so many coming into the chat. I'm going to have to up my pace a little bit. But thank you, James. Excellent insight there. Siamka says, I really don't like applying for jobs. Is there any other way of getting a job? I attended a conference, but no one gave me a job on the spot. Ineza, I'll ask you, and that's because I happen to know, thanks to the Scrimba podcast, that you made a Why You Should Hire Me video. Now, I don't know the full story behind this, but perhaps you could let us know what inspired you to make that video and what effect it had on your job hunt.
So for my application to the current job, the job offer the job application was on LinkedIn. I sent in I applied to it via LinkedIn, and then I got a response from the CEO, who was the one that posted the job offer, and he asked me, to follow up with 2 videos. So one of the videos was why you should hire me video, and another video explaining something or a moment that was one of the proudest moments in my life, if I remember correctly. So those were videos that I made in relation to the job application I had made. And so with the Why You Should Hire Me video, I guess it's a different approach compared to the cover letters I was used to writing. It's the first time I was making such a video. So I guess my approach in this video, I guess, was to tell them of my goals that are aligning with their company's missions and what they're looking for in a developer. And I guess through that video they were able to, I guess, tell what kind of person I am, my personality, and I guess it sort of gave them an overview of who I am as a person and a developer. And I guess that's one thing that probably helped me when in my application.
Perfect. Yes, and you can listen to Ineza's full interview with my colleague Alex on the Scrimba podcast here, and Silvia has one as well. So you can take a listen to those later. James, I'm not sure if you've got one yet. But,
I think so.
Not yet. I'm sure.
Tell Alex.
It's in the works. Brilliant. We're almost out of time, but I'd like to finish with one question from Nelson to all of you, which is how to get over imposter syndrome. Sylvia, what's your favorite tip for this?
I don't think you ever get over that. You calm it a little bit, but there will be always a moment in which you have a new problem to solve and you feel horribly dumb because you don't understand what's happening or even have the slightest idea on how to solve it. So you will just learn to Google better, to try things, and to ask for help. And yeah, of course, you will build knowledge, so you will sort of have some foundations on which you can count, and that will be more and more every day. But yeah, that's my opinion at least.
Beautiful. James, how about you? Any imposter syndrome tips?
Well, a senior dev said to me, I still feel like an imposter. And, he's got 5+ years experience. And you can't know everything about everything. As long as you know how to solve problems and how to find out what you need to know to solve problems, you'll get there. And whatever it is, it's just a problem in another form. So don't worry about it.
I can totally get behind that advice. Thank you. And finally, Ineza.
So I guess to emphasize on what Silvia said, yes, you'll definitely experience it, and you just have to learn to Google better and ask questions better. And I guess you should also know that you're not the only person who feels that way. Like even I myself do experience it at times. So all of us, it's something that we experience, but we know that it's a good feeling. That's how you should feel. You shouldn't feel overconfident, I guess, about things, because I guess with this feeling, I guess it sort of helps you to be more detailed and spot things that you may have missed in any case. So yeah, I'd say that I guess it helps you to be more cautious of what you're doing, and you just have to learn to, I guess, yeah, as Silvia said, ask questions better, ask for help better. Yeah, and in the long run, it will definitely become easier.
Brilliant advice, as was all the advice shared on this stream. It was wonderful to have you all here. Thank you so much for coming. I'd like to finish off by sharing the next stream, or the next Wednesday stream at least, which is something very fun. We are going to be welcoming Bob Zirol, yes, the Bob Zirol, and Treasure, who's another teacher at Scrimba, and they're going to be building the same app, but Bob with React and Treasure with Vue. That's going to be next Wednesday, so looking forward to that. Don't forget to hit the old subscribe button if you don't want to miss the stream, and give us a like or thumbs up if you enjoyed this. Thank you all for coming. As I said, it was fabulous to have you all, and best of luck with your coding careers, of course. Bye for now.
Thanks a lot. It was
Thank
a
you very much.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.